I got my brother Aharon. We are live on both YouTube and Facebook. YouTube, be sure to subscribe. It's going to be True Nation 12 and Facebook at True Nation Israelite Congregation. You can also call into the phone conference. The number is 302-202-1108, and the conference code is 918618. So today we're going to be going into the history of Israel, dealing with the first four sons. How many of y'all have actually read into the history of our forefathers and the tribes, dealing with Genesis 49, Deuteronomy 30, 32, somewhat? So we'll go into it today. You got other brothers going into the other brothers, in the weeks to come, but I'm going to just touch on the first four. So we're going to start off with the book of Romans, chapter 15 and verse 4. One of the foundation scriptures to understand why we have the Bible in the first place. So let's get Romans and 15 verse 4.
The book of Romans, chapter 15, verse 4.
Uh-huh.
For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning.
So you see that the Most High allowed us to still have this word today so that we can learn from it. We can see what we shouldn't do and what we should do through the testimonies and the history of our forefathers and foremothers. Go ahead.
Were written for our learning, that we, through patience and comfort of the scriptures, might have hope.
So when we read these scriptures, we're supposed to have hope and comfort. We're supposed to be comforted by this because it's the Most High's words. And the scriptures say that his words is spirit. So that's why we dive into the scriptures. That's why we read the scriptures for anybody who might have that question. So let's get right into it. Let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 49. And we're mainly going to be reading out of this and also the book of Deuteronomy chapter 33 tonight. You said there's no sound?
Mm-hmm.
On which one?
I'm about to find out. Is it Genesis 49?
Yeah, Genesis. Here, you want to fix
I can take a spot. You want to go get it real quick?
Yeah. Give us 1 second. Y'all having some technical difficulties. Gucci. So. Is it just for YouTube? It's for both. Really?
Get a mic check.
Mic check.
Mic check. You getting some sound?
On YouTube, not on Facebook, but I'll redo it. Go ahead.
All right, Con. So Genesis chapter 49, and let's start at verse 1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days.
Now we have an instance of our forefather Jacob getting ready to tell his son some things that's going to happen to him in the last days. Now, this isn't what this lesson is, but a lot of people, who subscribe to that doctrine of the 12 tribes chart, they use this chapter to explain who the children of Israel are by tribe today. So, for example, they'll say, if you're a so-called Negro, you're from the tribe of Judah, or if you're from Mexico, that means you're the tribe of Issachar. They use this to say that's what it is. They say, because it says this is for the last days. But just real quick, we're going to show that there's many last days talked about in the scripture that's not always talking about the end of times, here in 2019. So real quick, let's go to Acts chapter 2. and start at verse 14. By reading the scriptures, you'll find out it's a lot of accounts where the last days was always mentioned, and it wasn't talking about where we're living at today, the 21st century, the 20th century. All right, so go ahead.
What verse? Verse 1?
Chapter 2 and verse 14.
Oh, God. The book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 14. But Peter, standing up with the 11, lifted up his voice and said unto them, Ye men of Judea, and all ye that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words.
And just to preface it, what was going on in the book of Acts chapter 2, you had a lot of different Israelites coming from all these different countries. It talks about Israelites that came from Asia, that came from Egypt, Mesopotamia, all these scattered Israelites, they came together to keep the Feast of Pentecost. And you had a phenomenon going on where the Most High put his spirit upon all of them, right? And they was all speaking in tongues, and they were saying, what's going on with all these men? Are they drunk? So read on.
And all ye that dwell at Jerusalem, be this known unto you, and hearken to my words. For these are not drunken, as ye suppose.
Yep.
Seeing it is but the third hour of the day.
So it's, it's too early in the day. They're not drunk, but he's going to explain what's going on.
Verse 16. But this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel.
So now he's going to go into a prophecy that Joel spoke of. Go ahead.
Verse 17. And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh.
So he said what was going on is exactly what Joel was talking about. But Joel said in the last days, the Most High was going to pour out his spirit upon all flesh. This was taking place in the 1st century AD. So clearly it's not talking about the end of times. You understand? So I just wanted to preface that so we can get a better understanding of what we're going into. What Jacob was telling his sons was things that was going to befall them, things that was going to happen to them in the near future or at some point in the future, not at the exact last days. So let's jump back to, and you guys can actually write down Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, because Paul also talked about things that was going to be happening in the last days when he was on the earth, not talking about what's going on right now. We're going to go back to Genesis 49. I just wanted to start that off. And you can start from verse 1 again.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49, and verse 1. And Jacob called his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Verse 2. Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father.
Go ahead.
Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity.
So this is what we're going to go into. The firstborn, Reuben, he said, Thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity. Let's get into why these attributes were given into Reuben. Let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 37. And you can pick up at verse 18, because how many of y'all are familiar with Joseph and his brethren? So y'all know what happened to Joseph, how he ended up in Egypt, right? So we're going to see why Jacob, which was their father, said Reuben, was a very dignified son because of what he did to save his brother's life during what transpired. So go ahead and pick up at verse 18.
The book of Genesis, chapter 37, verse 18. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him.
So his brothers actually conspired to kill him, talking about Joseph, because, Joseph was a dreamer of dreams. He was getting visions from the Most High, and he had told his family a vision that he had, and they didn't like it at all. He was talking about how all of his brethren was going to bow down to him and worship him. And he was one of the younger ones. So they said, you out of your mind. And that infuriated them and made them want to kill him. Go ahead.
And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say, some evil beast hath devoured him. and we shall see what will become of his dreams.
It's pretty cold, right, for your brothers to do that to you, but keep going.
Verse 21. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him.
So this is why Jacob is saying, you know, Reuben, you have dignity, because he actually did the right thing. Out of all of his brothers who was trying to kill their brother, he stepped in and diverted their plan to where it didn't go through. Go ahead.
And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands.
So he said, hey, instead of killing him, just put him in this pit in the wilderness. Pretty much, you know, trying to tell them, you know, he ain't going to get out of the pit. Ain't nobody going to find him. So we ain't got to actually have that blood upon our hands, because our people knew about the laws of the Most High. What you'll read in the Bible about our people is, even though we were the chosen, even to this day, we wasn't always right. And that's one thing that we still struggle with as a people today. Israel being a rebellious people, chosen by the Most High, sanctified by the Most High, all these mercies performed for us in front of our eyes, and we still found some way to be, you know, backsliders, as the scriptures talk about. So he said, hey, instead of killing him, let's put him into this pit. And it said he did this so that he might get him out of their hands. And go ahead.
To deliver him to his father again.
So he had hopes that he would get out of that pit, and eventually he would make it back home to his father. So he said, hey, with that, Reuben, you showed a lot of dignity within that act. That's why he said that in Genesis 49. Let's go back to that.
Genesis chapter 49 and verse 3. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power.
He said, and also the excellency of power. Let's get an account of the scriptures, because again, remember, he said these things are going to befall you in the last days, a later time, right? So let's show that as an example. Let's go to the book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 5 and verse 18. He said, yeah, Reuben, you my firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength, excellency of dignity, and also the excellency of power. Let's see how our forefather was getting down.
The book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 5, verse 18. The sons of Reuben and the Gadites and half the tribes of Manasseh, of valiant men.
It said of valiant men. These was men of war with great skill. Go ahead.
Of valiant men, men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow and skillful in war.
It said these were the attributes of these tribes, these brothers. He said that's why you had the excellency of power. You knew exactly what you needed to do on that battlefield to protect your people. So we have his dignified acts. We see exactly in the scriptures how he was valiant and why he was the excellency of power. Go ahead.
Were 440,703 score that went out to the war.
Imagine that. Let's go back to Genesis.
Genesis chapter 49 and verse, you want to read verse 4?
Yeah, you can start at verse 4.
Verse 4, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel.
So now we're getting into something else. He said, look, Reuben, you have these good traits, but I also need to tell you about yourself, about these bad traits as well. So he said, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. Go ahead.
Because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch.
Now, how many of y'all know what that's referencing? What did Reuben do to defile his father's couch? He ended up sleeping with his father's handmaid. So in essence, his stepmom, which we know according to the scriptures is completely off, right? Leviticus 18, we have those guidelines of proper sexual acts and immoral sexual acts. So what Reuben did, he said, being unstable as water, you shall not excel, because the firstborn son, what is he supposed to get? He's supposed to get the double portion. He has the birthright. But he said, you're not going to excel in that because you didn't messed up and defiled my couch. Let's get that history. Genesis chapter 35. And we're gonna read verse 22.
The book of Genesis, chapter 35, and verse 22. And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard it. And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12.
So there you have it. Reuben's sin, his great sin, because that sin, that's worthy of death. But you're gonna see where the Most High spared him. So he said, being unstable as water, you're not going to excel, Reuben. Let's go to 1 Chronicles, again, chapter 5. And if I'm going too fast or anything, y'all tell me to slow down, because it is a lot of scriptures that we have to go into. So I'm going to try to, give it to you at a smooth pace. So 1 Chronicles, chapter 5, and read verse 1.
The book of 1 Chronicles, chapter 5, and verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn.
So it said, for he was the firstborn, but go ahead.
But for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel.
So because of Reuben's sin, he lost his birthright as being the head. It said instead it was given unto Joseph's sons. Joseph had two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And then you'll find out through the process of time that Ephraim ended up taking that and he became the head tribe. All right, go ahead.
And the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright.
You see, that's why he said the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright, because it was given away. It was messed up. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 33 now, so you can see how the Most High ended up dealing with Reuben. Because like I said, according to Leviticus and the laws that we have set up, he was supposed to be punished by death. But let's see what happens when Moses ends up blessing the tribes. 33. Yeah, Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 6.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33 and verse 6. Let Reuben live.
It said, let Reuben live. Go ahead.
And not die.
And not die. That's mercy of the Most High.
And let not his man be few.
So the Most High didn't even end up cutting off his genealogy, because you have instances of that in the scriptures where some people came to a complete end. The Most High still allowed him to be here. Was that all of that?
Verse 6, yeah.
Yeah, jump over to chapter 27. Let me just show y'all real quick. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 27 and verse 20.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 27 and verse 20. Cursed be he that lieth with his father's wife.
You see that? Reuben was supposed to be cursed, put out, put to death. Go ahead.
Because he uncovered his father's skirt. And all the people shall say, Amen.
So it's supposed to be an understood thing, but all praise be to the Most High. Because he loved the children of Israel, he gave us a lot of mercy, even unto this day. So that's dealing with the firstborn son of Reuben. Let's get into the next two, dealing with Simeon and Levi. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 49. And when y'all get the chance to, y'all shall also go to the website, which is truenation.org, and go down to the video lessons. Because like I said, my portion of the lesson is more so just going into the actual history of it. But for those who are new to the truth, one of the first doctrines that you come across is the 12 tribe sign. Like I said, if you're so-called Negro, you're Judah. If you're Mexican, you're Issachar. And they use this again to prove that. But you'll find out that reading through the history, it has nothing to deal with what that teaching is. And the brothers went in, it's a 4-part lesson. They went into it in great detail, showing that that chart is inaccurate and is not to be followed. The Most High said, you'll know the children of Israel, by your spirit. The spirit bears witness. But you have to remember that we did lose our inheritance. The Most High said in the book of Jeremiah, let's go there real quick. Jeremiah 17 and 4. He said we was discontinued from our heritage. And you'll read in the Revelations where we gonna have that understanding of who we are again, because for those who make the kingdom, You have a gate specifically for you with your name on it, with an angel at every gate. So they try to make a big deal out of it, but knowing which tribe you are is not going to get you salvation. Our people knew what tribe they was from way back when, and we still went into bondage. So let's read that real quick. Jeremiah 17:4.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 17 and verse 4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage.
So he said, we're going to discontinue from our heritage, meaning to come to a cease. Go ahead.
That I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever.
And one of the downsides to being in captivity is we don't have a monopoly on our records. If you own a business here in America, you don't have the actual library where all the documents and blueprints is held. So if those documents get stolen or taken away, it's out of your power. So we know, according to the scriptures, the children of Israel were reckoned by genealogy. We used to have records of saying, hey, this is Yashamai, son of this, son of that, son of that, son of that, tribe of this. We don't have that no more. And it's no shame in it. It is what it is. Most High said you would be discontinued from it. Thing is, we just have to follow along with spirit and in truth, as the book of John chapter 4 says. So let's go back to Genesis chapter 49. And let's pick up at verse, read verse 4 again.
God. The book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch.
So everybody got the understanding of Reuben, right? Go ahead.
Verse 5. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations.
So let's deal with Simeon and Levi. Let's go to the book of Genesis, chapter 34. And let me show you what our brothers was doing back in the day. Cool. Let's start at verse 1.
The book of Genesis, chapter 34 and verse 1.
We're gonna jump around the chapter. We're not gonna read the whole thing.
And Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land.
So this was our sister, Dinah. It wasn't just all males that our forefather Jacob had. We had a sister as well. Go ahead.
Verse 2. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her.
The Hivite. So this is dealing with one of the African nations. It said, while our sister was out in the field dealing with the rest of the people, it said this African man came to her. Go ahead.
Prince of the country saw her. He took her and lay with her and defiled her.
So you can see here that clearly there was an unlawful act of sex that went on. Because Israelite women are not supposed to be dealing with the other nations. Vice versa. Go ahead.
And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel and spake kindly unto the damsel. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, get me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come.
So Jacob ended up telling his sons what happened to their sister. Let's read on.
Verse 6. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it.
So you had a situation where the king, his son, the prince, ended up sleeping with our sister, and he wanted to make it right. He said, look, clearly you didn't do this right. Let's go to this man's family. Let's make it right. Let's talk to him. Say, hey, this is what the deal is. My son wants to take your daughter as a wife. Let's work something out. So instead of them actually speaking with the father, they spoke with Simeon and Levi, the brothers. Go ahead.
Verse 7. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved, and they were very wroth.
So they was hot. Go ahead.
Because he had wrought folly,
which is
Israel,
foolishness. Go ahead.
In Israel, in lying with Jacob's daughter, which which thing ought not to be done.
Like I said, which thing ought not to be done? What's the chosen seed doing with heathens, who the Most High looks at as dogs and spit? So let's jump down and let's read verse 13.
Verse 13, and the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor, his father, deceitfully and said,
Well, because like I said, they came to him saying, hey, I want to make this right. And you know that when you want to take a man's daughter to wife, usually there's a dowry required, some type of payment or some type of service that you would have to fulfill so that man will feel comfortable giving you his daughter. So he said, hey, anything y'all ask, don't ask too little, don't ask, like anything you want, we will give you. My son really wants your sister as a wife. So it says, verse 13, the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor's his father deceitfully. Go ahead.
And said, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister.
So this was their reasoning. We gonna lie to this dude, and it's justified in our minds because they defiled our sister. Go ahead.
And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us.
Go ahead.
But in this will we consent unto you.
So he said, if you do this, we will consent unto you. But remember, he said that they were speaking these things deceitfully. Go ahead.
If ye will be as we be, that every male of you be circumcised, then will we give our daughter unto you.
Go ahead.
And we will take your daughters to us.
Go ahead.
And we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. Verse 17. But if ye will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then will we take our daughter, and we will be gone. Verse 18. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son.
Now, this is something you have to look at in the grand scheme of things. How much respect did these African nations have to have for Israel? They only wanted one daughter, and the dowry was that this man had to go back to his kingdom and get all the men of his kingdom circumcised just so his son, the prince, could be happy. Imagine that. Somebody coming to your door, hey, my homie wants this chick, so you got to get circumcised. I'm like, what? And I don't know if brothers in here had that done. I didn't have it done as an adult, but you know, for brothers that I do know, it's not a light thing. It's painful. So for the whole nation to get that done, right? Let's drop down to verse 25.
Verse 25. And it came to pass.
Actually, start at verse 24.
Verse 24. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem his son hearkened all that went out of the gate of the gate of his city.
So, you know, they probably ran back. They said, man, this all they want. They don't want no gold. They probably ran back there fast. Tell the whole nation, blow the alarm. Go ahead.
And every male was circumcised, all that went out of the gate of his city. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi.
So it said they waited a couple days till everybody in the city was sore. Go ahead.
Dinah's brethren took each man his sword and came upon the city boldly.
2 men. Go ahead.
Came upon the city boldly and slew all the males.
Simeon and Levi killed every male in that city for their sister. Go ahead.
And they slew Hamor and Shechem his sons with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house.
And it gets better. Go ahead.
And went out. And the sons of Jacob came upon the slain and spoiled the city.
So not only did they kill all the males, but they spoiled the city. They took everything. Go ahead.
Because they had defiled their sister.
And this is their reasoning. No, what they did is not okay. We may feel like it is like, hey, these heathens, they need to die anyways. But you got to understand, the Most High said we're supposed to be an example to these nations. Even like you got a lot of brothers who's real zealous now. Oh, Esau, can't wait till you put to death. We're going to be doing you bad in the kingdom. We're not going to be hanging Edomites and torturing them in the kingdom. They're going to work, and the Most High said they're going to be put to death. It's that simple. We're not going to have to deal with none of the heathens like that. You're not going to find in our scriptures where we was dealing with the heathens like how they dealt with us in captivity. It was real simple. You either obey or get out or be put to death.
Yeah.
Because we had servants, just like how we wake up every day to go to work for our oppressor, and we don't mind it as much. Well, he treats me well, he pays me. These are the same thoughts that the nations had when they served us. They wouldn't want to come back if we was treating them wrong. So go ahead.
Verse 28.
Uh-huh.
They took their sheep and their oxen and their asses and that which was in the city and that which was in the field.
I'm trying to figure out how many trips did they have to take. They had to keep going back and back. I know they didn't take that all in one trip.
It was just the two of them.
Just the two of them. Go ahead.
Verse 29, and all their wealth and all their little ones.
So they took all the kids as well. Go ahead.
And their wives took they captive.
They took all the wives. This is like the definition of riding for real. Two people. That's like you going into somebody's hood and you just tearing it up. I need your cars. I need your jewelry. I need your dogs. I need all them pit bulls. I need all y'all girls, and I need y'all stanky kids. Like they really that's what you call gangster. Go ahead.
and spoiled even all that was in the house.
They said, man, they took everything that could be possibly be taken. Go ahead.
And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land.
Now, in their mind, do you think they was thinking about that? They probably thought they was doing something that was just. You know what? These heathens who really don't need to be around anyways, they defiled our sister, slept with her without our permission, which no permission from the Most High at all. It's only right that we go in there and kill them and take their stuff. They probably came back home with all these possessions showing their dad, like, look, Pops. And Jacob said, they have troubled him to make him stink among the inhabitants of the land. Because you have to remember, at this time, we wasn't in our holy land like how it was supposed to be with all the tribes surrounded. We flourished. Jacob was in the midst of all these other nations, a very small number. It would have been nothing for these other nations to come and attack Jacob and his family and to kill them all. That's why he said, you've troubled me. I'm sitting there trying to be a man of peace, making all these leagues with these people, just trying to be cool. Because you know the scriptures say, if at all possible, live at peace with all men. That's what he was trying to do, using that wisdom. But his sons wasn't thinking about that. And that's why when we go back to Genesis 49, it said,
Instruments of cruelty.
exactly. In Genesis 49:5, it says, Simeon and Levi, they are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations, because what they did was cruel. It wasn't right. Go ahead and read verse 30 again.
Verse 30. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me.
Because you got to understand, when you're a nation, you have to make leagues with people, make peace treaties. So America, they have something called NATO, the North Atlantic, treaty? I forget what it's called, but we have all these different treaties with all these different nations. So if somebody bombs Russia or whatever, America has to bomb them. So what's to say that this African nation who his sons went in there and killed didn't have any friends that want to ride for them? So that's why he said, you've troubled me. Go ahead.
In the middle of verse 30.
Uh-huh.
They shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, and my house.
Go
and
ahead.
I and my house.
Now look at what the son's reply was. Still not even using that wisdom or listening to what their father had to say. Go ahead.
Verse 31. And they said, should he deal with our sister as with an harlot?
Are he supposed to deal with our sister like she's some kind of hoe? This was their thoughts. And to a certain extent, we can all agree with it. But again, it's a right and wrong way to go about dealing with things. If anything, he should have been killed the son and the father, and that was it. He went and killed a bunch of innocent men who had nothing to do with that situation. And the thing is, at this point in time, because you got to remember, the later on you get in our history, the more and more the nations fell back away from the laws of the Most High, because Adam knew the laws, and through Adam comes everybody. So at one point in time, everybody knew the law. We all had the understanding. So like when you read the account of Abraham, when he was, I want to say he was in Egypt, and they saw him playing with Sarah, and one of the princes or one of the kings came up to him saying, hey, I want this woman. And he sit there and said like, oh, that's my sister. Because he was scared that if he said that that was my wife, that they was going to kill him because they thought, that was an unlawful place, that they had no recollection of the law. But when the Most High gave the Egyptian that vision saying, hey, if you touch that woman, I'm going to put you and your people to death. He went back to Abraham and was like, man, how come you didn't tell me this was your wife? Like, we have more than enough sense to know that adultery is not cool. So that's the thing. As time goes on, the nations fell more and more away from it. But not all, heathen nations was dealing unjustly like they are today. So that's why Jacob was really upset about that. And you can see that, the sons, they try to justify their cruel acts with, their sister being defiled. So let's go to Romans chapter 6. And the scriptures go into detail as to what these cruel instruments are really talking about. Let's go to the book of Romans chapter 6 and give me verse 13. Actually, 12. Start at 12.
The book of Romans, chapter 6 and verse 12. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey it in the lust thereof. Verse 13. Neither yield ye your members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin.
Dealing with your mind state. You shouldn't be yielding over your body and your thoughts to the instruments of unrighteousness, sin. That's what he was trying to tell him, saying, hey, if y'all don't fix y'all ways, y'all will become a sinful nation. And you have to understand the relationships that our forefathers had with the Most High. Jacob, he understood everything that was going down. His father, Isaac, his father, Abraham, who was close with the Most High. The scripture said that was his friend. They had understanding of prophecies. The Most High was telling them things that was going to happen in the last days. So they trying to, make sure that nation is going to come up right and that they can inherit the land, because that was the promise that was given to Abraham. Abraham told all his sons, look, the Most High said he's going to give us our own land. He's trying to keep this in the vision and keep it alive. And then you got your sons potentially doing things that's going to disrupt that. When you put it in context, you can really understand why his father was upset. Said, man, we trying to just make it to the promised land, and you're going to get us killed before we even get halfway there. So that's what he's telling his son. He said, hey, the instruments of unrighteousness, sin, that should not dwell in your body. Read 13 again.
Verse 13. Neither yield ye your members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin, but yield yourselves unto God, as those that are alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto God.
So this is what we should be using ourselves for, the righteousness of the Most High, being light to those who are without, still lost in darkness. This is our duty and our obligation as Israelites. Let's go to the Apocrypha, the book of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus.
Favorite book.
Man, for real.
Thanks, Art.
And let's go to the chapter 28. And let's read verse 8.
The book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 28 and verse 8. Abstain from strife, and thou shalt diminish thy sins.
It said, abstain from strife, and thou shalt diminish thy sins. Because with strife comes contention. With contention comes hatred, and then pride, all things that are eventually going to lead you to death. These things should not be within our bodies. That's what you call dealing with the instruments of unrighteousness. These things are not to be in the Most High's chosen people like that, used unrightfully. Go ahead.
For a furious man will kindle strife.
And that's what you see those two brothers did. They kindled strife. Go ahead.
Verse 9. A sinful man disquieteth friends, and maketh debate among them that be at peace.
Everything Jacob was worried about. We have a good example of that. Let's go to stay in the same book, and let's go to chapter 8. And read verse 15.
The book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 8, and verse 15.
Watch this.
Travel not by the way with a bold fellow.
The Most High is saying, do not travel by the way of a bold fellow. Ra'aya, what is that talking about?
Justin.
It says, travel not by the way of a bold fellow. What is that dealing with? Is it wrong to be bold?
In pride, yes.
In pride? Also, give me an example.
So, walking around saying that I know I'm, or for instance, for example, okay, I know I'm Israel, I'm keeping the laws, I know I'm going to be saved, you know, or walking around with the pride of thinking that you're better than somebody because you do have that knowledge, but none of us, you know, until the end, until we endure to the end, no one knows if we will be saved. So it's kind of a prideful thing.
I can definitely have an effect on you in one way or another. Yeah. But this is more so dealing with like those bold for nothing people. Mm-hmm. You trying to go out and just get a hamburger with your homie, someone looking at him. What you looking at? Esau. Yeah. You gonna be put to death, Esau. And you in the bank trying to get your money, right? Sure. Now both of y'all in the back of a squad car on your way to the police station. That's more so what it's dealing with. And you'll see the importance of it because you have a lot of that within Israel. The brawlers and the strikers. The Most High said that's not supposed to be in a righteous man's body like that. Because I'm not supposed to be like that with you. You my brother. You're supposed to say that for the heathens. But there's also a wrong way to have that within your body. Keep reading.
Let me start from the top. Travel not by the way with a bold fellow, lest he become grievous unto thee.
And I know we all got experiences of that growing up in the hood. You was just trying to chill or something. You got one homeboy who don't know how to shut up, still talking at a club or whatever it is. You about to get into a fight when you can completely avoid it. Go ahead.
Lest he become grievous unto thee, for he will do according to his own will.
And this is what you have to understand. This is exactly what Simeon and Levi did, moving according to their own will. And those type of people, they will argue you down tooth and nail and try to find ways to justify themselves, even though they're completely wrong. Keep reading. We're in Sirach chapter 8. We started at verse 15. We're at the end of 15 right now.
And thou shalt perish with him through his folly.
And it says, and you're going to perish with that man through his foolishness. That's why it says, don't travel with that man. And you're going to see how this ties in once we go back to Genesis. Keep reading down. Read 16.
Verse 16. Strive not with an angry man, and go not with him into a solitary place.
Dealing with the setup. There ain't no way in hell you should be trying to strive with an angry man. We'll take it to the alley then, where ain't nobody watching. Read on.
For blood is as nothing in his sight.
This man had caught 20 bodies. He is not tripping off of you. He gonna kill you and then go home and eat mashed potatoes like nothing happened. Go ahead.
And where there is no help, he will overthrow thee.
So this is dealing with the type of mind state of evil people. These are the instruments of cruelty and unrighteousness that the scriptures is talking about. Now let's see how this relates going back to Genesis chapter 49. And let's pick up back at verse 5.
The book of Genesis chapter 49 and verse 5. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations.
And this is it's one of the other points because they try to, use this again with saying this is how you know which tribe you're from. It says Simeon and Levi are brethren. All the children of Israel was brethren. But it's letting you know that it was an event that they're talking about. These two brothers did something together. That's what it's saying. Go ahead.
Verse 6. Oh, my soul.
Now look at what Jacob's saying. Go ahead.
Come not thou into their secret.
It said, come not thou unto their secret. What was their secret? Let's go to the book of Psalm, chapter 19. You see, when you read the Bible precept upon precept, it makes perfect sense. You don't have to do no speculation. You don't have to get angry with people because they don't understand, because that's what people try to do. When they try to tell you something that's not according to scripture, and you know the scriptures and you just keep asking them, but where's it at in the scriptures? Brother, you just don't get it. You're not spiritual enough. When people start saying stuff like that, you already know. You just got to walk away. But when you read it precept upon precept, line upon line, it makes perfect sense.
There's no other way, man.
Yeah. So read that. The book of Psalm, chapter 19 and verse 12. We're going to find out what their secret was.
The book of Psalms, chapter 19 and verse 12.
Uh-huh.
Who can understand his errors?
Who can understand the errors of a man? Go ahead.
Cleanse thou me from secret faults.
Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Sin. Got to understand what was being told to our brothers. Look, you have these good traits, but if you don't fix these things, you will fall. Now look where our people are at today. We have fair warning. through generation, we have fair warning. Again, Israel being hard-headed, stiff-necked. That's how you know we're the people of the Bible. There's no way we should be able to read the scriptures. It's like for people who fall out of the truth. It's crazy. You be in the truth 5, 6, 7, 15 years. You know exactly what the punishment is for falling away out the truth, and you still have people that do it. That's how you know we Israel. And it's crazy because you got that scripture, I want to say it's in Ezekiel, where the Most High said, for the prophets, he said, I'm sending you to your own people. I'm not sending you to a people of a strange speech where you're not going to understand what they saying or where they not going to understand what you're saying. I'm sending you to your people in the hood. It said, yet they don't listen to you because they don't even listen to me. It said, but truth be told, if I was to take this same message and go teach it to the heathens, they would listen. Yeah, that's the cold part. If I was out there on Slauson and Western Saturday telling white people or Asians, you're the true children of Israel. This kingdom that's coming is for you to inherit forever. You're better than everyone else on this earth. Oh, man, they're going to have a whole different swag about themselves.
They won't be worried about no other nation but themselves.
It's crazy. But that's what it's dealing with. So back to Genesis 49. It said, O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united. Because remember, he said, travel not in the way of a bold fellow. Jacob was saying, man, I pray I don't get caught up in that situation. And it's also admonishment for the rest of the tribes. Don't follow that same route. Do not join yourself unto that same mind state of pride, which leads to sin. All right. So let's read verse 6 again.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 6. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly, mine honor, be not thou united, excuse me. Be not thou united.
Boy, pronouncing them words, huh?
For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall.
You see that? And ain't that what it said in Sirach? It said that person is going to do according to their will. It said, cursed be their anger, for it was fierce. I'm sorry. It says, for in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they dig down a wall. Because again, you have to understand, Jacob, their father, was doing everything they can to make sure they were safe. They had a wall of protection of these other nations. They weren't worried about overtaking his family. But because they did that, it opened up the gates for that to happen. Go ahead.
Verse 7, cursed be their anger, for it was fierce.
And wasn't their anger fierce? Go ahead.
And their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel.
So now you can see the punishment that followed with this lifestyle, because we never changed from it. The children of Israel continued in that same line of sin. So let's see how that affected us today. Let's go to the book of Joshua. And we're going to read verse 1.
Joshua 1 and 1.
I'm sorry, 14. Joshua chapter 14 and verse 1.
The book of Joshua chapter 14 and verse 1. And these are the countries which the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
distributed for inheritance to them.
Yep.
Verse 2, by lot was their inheritance, as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes for the half tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And Moses had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and half tribe on the other side Jordan.
So for y'all who don't know, the land of Israel, we were literally broken up into our own divisions. You had the land of Judah here, land of Manasseh here, land of Simeon here, Gad, Ephraim, so on and so forth. We had our own land allotments. This is showing how we were dealing with Simeon and Levi specifically, how they were divided and scattered throughout those land allotments. Go ahead.
But unto the Levites he gave none inheritance among them.
So for Levi, he had no land. Levi did not receive his own portion of land. Go ahead.
For the children of Joseph were
I'm sorry, that's all I needed.
Mhm.
So as you see here, Levi, he didn't receive his own land. Let's go over to chapter 21. And pick up at verse 41.
The book of Joshua, chapter 21 and verse 41. All the cities of the Levites within the possession of the children of Israel.
So the Levites were in possession of all the other tribes of Israel. Go ahead.
Within the possession of the children of Israel were 48 cities with their suburbs.
So the children of Levi, all they got for land was suburbs, which is small cities within a town or a state or a country. And the reason why they had to do that was because they had to do the sacrifices for the Most High. And it would be too much of an inconvenience for all of the children of Israel to have to travel to one land of all the Levites to do sacrifices when we're always doing sacrifices. So the Most High made it simple. He said, hey, you ain't going to have your own land, but instead you always going to work for me. You're going to be a servant for real. I'm going to put you in every city of your children, your brothers. And with that, you always going to be working the sacrifices, working a tabernacle. When we had our big feast dealing with Pentecost or tabernacles or Passover, this is what they were given as a possession. Go ahead.
Verse 42. These cities were every one with their suburbs round about them.
Mhm.
Thus were all these cities. Verse 43. And the Lord gave unto Israel all the land which he swore to give unto their fathers.
And that's the thing. The Most High kept his promise. But the thing is, because of what Jacob told his sons, they did not receive that land for Levi. Let's go to Joshua chapter 19. So we dealt with Levi, how he was going to be spread across the nation and scattered amongst Israel. Now let's deal with Simeon. Read chapter 19 and verse 1.
The book of Joshua, chapter 19 and verse 1. And the second lot came forth to Simeon, even for the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their families. And their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah.
So just like it said in the other chapter, these two were inherited, or they were in the possession of the rest of the children of Israel. So Simeon's land was actually within the land of Judah. He didn't even have his own land like that. He was renting his own land, just put it that way. He didn't have his whole thing for himself like all the rest of the other tribes. So he was within Judah, making sure Judah was looking over him. And with that, of course, you're going to have a lot of mixing because it's easier to stay pure and by yourself when you have your own land. So it's a whole lot easier for you to have a whole land of Levites or a whole land of Gadites when you have your own country. But when you have Simeon within another tribe, that's a lot of mixing and a lot of scattering that's going to go on. So that's how you can see how they were scattered, as Jacob was said they would be. Now, dealing with Levi, his name being joined unto me, he was set apart for the service of the Most High. Like I said, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 33.
Verse 8.
Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 8.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33 and verse 8. And of Levi he said, let thy Thummim and thy Urim be with thy Holy One,
which was things they used to help minister for the Most High. Go ahead.
whom thou didst prove at Massa, and with whom thou didst strive at the waters of Meribah.
So this is dealing with Moses, because you know Moses, he was a Levite. Dealing when he had that staff, he was having all those wonders work for the children of Israel. That's what it's referencing. Go ahead. Now check this out.
Verse 9, who said unto his father and his mother, I have not seen him, neither did he acknowledge his brethren, nor knew his own children. For they have observed thy word and kept thy covenant.
So it says that these people, the Levites, they didn't get to acknowledge the rest of their brethren like how all the other tribes could. The Levites, they couldn't just go over to the land of Judah and just be kicking it like it is what it is, because they had a certain set of laws that they had to live by. They couldn't be defiled. They couldn't go to their mother or father's funerals because they were for the service of the Most High. They couldn't sweat for certain of them. Like they had real tedious jobs. And the cold part is, if they messed up on them, their judgment was death. They didn't even have like, it's a slap on the wrist. Like, unless they didn't know, like you have examples like where if somebody came to one of the priests and gave them a sacrifice to give to the Most High, but if that priest didn't know that the man giving that sacrifice was unclean, because if you're unclean, whatever you touch is unclean. So if they didn't know about it, then the Most High would give them pardon. But if they knew that that man was unclean and they touched something unclean and then tried to go serve the Most High, they got put to death. Look at Aaron's sons. Y'all know how Aaron's sons died? They burned the wrong incense.
Strange.
The Most High wanted frankincense and myrrh, and they burned something else. They was burning that butt naked and that what they be selling on Crenshaw, that Egyptian musk. they started burning that, and the Most High put them to death on the spot in front of everybody. So they had a real strict set of laws that they had to live by, and that's why I said they didn't even get to acknowledge the rest of their brethren, because they was always working. And it was more than just like the feast that they did, because you got to remember the Levites, they were the doctors. At the age of 8 days old, every male child had to get circumcised. It's always a pregnant Black or Latino woman walking around. So that's a whole lot of circumcisions that the Levites was doing every single day, every single year. It never stopped for them. They was always busy. So this was their portion. Read verse 10.
Verse 10, they shall teach Jacob thy judgments and Israel thy law.
So not only did they have to serve the Most High dealing with sacrifices, but they also were the teachers of Israel. Read.
They shall put incense before thee and whole burnt sacrifice upon thine altar.
So let's get an example of this. Let's go to the book of Nehemiah. Always miss Nehemiah. And we're going to read chapter 8. And verse 1.
The book of Nehemiah, chapter 8 and verse 1. And all the people gathered themselves together as one man in the street that was before the water gate. And they spake unto Ezra the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded to Israel.
So they was telling Ezra, hey, bring out the law. Bring the book of the law of Moses. Go ahead.
And Ezra the priest.
Ezra the what?
Ezra the priest.
So you can see a Levite. This was his duty. Go ahead.
And Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation of men and women, and all that could hear with understanding upon the first day of the 7th month.
Read on.
And he read therein the street that was before the water gate from the morning until midday.
Do you see how tedious that job is? Can you imagine just teaching Israel at that? You're seeing these middle school and elementary school teachers stressed out trying to teach Israel this bootleg curriculum America God. Imagine trying to teach a bunch of hard-headed Israelites the law. It's crazy because I see it in here when we be going over certain lessons, people's heads like it never fails. But that was their job. So he would teach it all day. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 33. Let me show y'all this last aspect of Levi.
You said Deuteronomy.
33. And pick up at verse 11.
So, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33 and verse 11. Bless the Lord his substance and accept the work of his hands.
So it's saying, hey, this is what Moses is saying. Blessed be the work of the hands of Levi, because they're going to do some great things for the nation. Go ahead.
Smite through the loins of them that rise against him.
It said, smite through the loins of them, the Levites, who rise up against Israel. Go ahead.
Against him, and of them that hate him, that they rise not again.
Banaya, what instance do we have in history where the Levites stood up for the children of Israel? I know you know, what? You tap out?
Oh,
What about you, sis? Ra'aya? Sisters back there? Let's go to the book of Maccabees. You look like a Maccabee back there, Rock. You got that war beard. Everybody you catch, you get a new braid. Let's go to 1 Maccabees, chapter 2, and let's read verse 1. Let's start at verse 1.
The book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 2 and verse 1. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jeroboam.
So what does that make the Maccabees if Mattathias was the son of a priest? Levites. Go ahead.
From Jerusalem and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, Jonan, called Cadiz, Simon, called Thasi, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar, called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was
Aphis.
There you go.
So we got this family of Levites called the Maccabees. It means the hammer. Let's see what they did for the nation. And it's a whole lot I can go into, but we're going to choose one instance where what was explained in Deuteronomy chapter 33 is exactly what's going to happen. Let's jump over to chapter 5 and 1 Maccabees. And let's read verse 32.
The book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 5, verse 32. And he said unto his host, fight this day for your brethren.
Because remember, that's what Deuteronomy 33 said. It said, hey, anyone that comes up against the children of Israel, they're going to smite down through their loins. So they said, hey, fight this day for your brethren. Go ahead.
So he went forth behind them in 3 companies, who sounded their trumpets and cried with prayer.
Go ahead.
Then the host of Timotheus, knowing that it was Maccabeus.
This was Judas, the son, the main war son, the one that was leading all the charges. Go ahead. It said when he found out that it was the host of Judas, what'd he do?
Fled from him.
It said he ran. Go ahead.
Wherefore he smote them with a great slaughter, so that there were killed of them that day about 8,000 men.
Can y'all imagine putting 8,000 people to death? Do y'all know how much energy that takes?
In that day.
In one day. My brother, you play football. Just running up the field, catching the ball, trying to make tackles, that's tiring. Now imagine trying to do that to somebody who's trying to kill you, though. Like both of y'all is doing everything y'all can to make sure you stay alive. That's a whole nother level. 8,000 people. That's how you know they was proficient. They was just sling, sling, sling. They was making every shot count. And it's crazy because it's another account in the scriptures. Actually, might be able to get it real quick. What time is it? Let's see if I can find it real quick. This is crazy. Yep. Go to chapter 6. Check this out. showing how our people was dealing with battle. Go to chapter 6 and read start at verse 43.
The book of First Maccabees, chapter 6, verse 43.
Mm-hmm.
Eleazar also, surnamed Savaran, perceiving that one of the beasts armed with royal harness was higher than all the rest.
So just to preface it, this is a battle that they was having. The battle was in the field. They had a lot of elephants and large war animals out on the field. So one of the Maccabees, one of the Levites, he saw one elephant that had a carriage on top of his back that stood a little bit higher than everybody else's. So he figured clearly the king is in that chariot right there. And usually in a war like that, once you kill the king, all the armies kind of just flee everywhere, because that's like their main heart and soul in a fight. You see the king dead, it's like, man, we're really doomed, you know? So he saw that dude. He said, clearly that's the king. I need to go do something about it. Go ahead.
And supposing that the king was upon him, put himself in jeopardy to the end he might deliver his people.
He said he put himself in jeopardy, meaning this wasn't the safest thing he could have done, but to make sure his people was good, he did it. Go ahead.
And get him a perpetual name.
Wherefore
he ran upon him courageously through the midst of the battle.
Now imagine this. Remember, the other battle, they killed 8,000 people. Y'all remember in high school when y'all had the little earthquake drills and fire drills and all the kids would go to the field? And that's only like 3,000 people. So imagine a battle when it's like 16, 20,000 people in the midst of you. He said that he ran through the midst of them. Go ahead.
Slaying one on the right hand and on the left, so that they were divided from him on both sides.
He had a clear lane because he is running through them. He cleared his own lane, going through thousands of people. Go ahead.
Fast. Verse 46, which done he crept under the elephant, and thrust him under and slew him.
So he killed the elephant from up under. Go ahead.
Whereupon the elephant fell down upon him, and there he died.
Go ahead. So he actually died. The elephant fell on him and he died, but that was very courageous. Go ahead.
Howbeit the rest of the Jews, seeing the strength of the king and the violence of his forces, turned away from them.
So imagine that. The stuff that the Levites is doing for our people. Let's go back to Genesis. I just recently reread Maccabees, and you be reading the Bible so much you kind of forget some of the stuff you read. When I read that, you watch certain movies, you just picture it in your mind. I'm just like, man, it's crazy. So that was dealing with Simeon and Levi, the understanding of them and the history that they have. Let's deal with the final brother of tonight, which is the fourth born son, Judah. Genesis 49 and verse 8. Hey, your guy, can you give me a paper towel? Thanks, son.
Judah.
Yeah, go ahead and pick up at verse 8.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 8.
Judah,
thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee.
So let's deal with Judah. He said, Judah, you art whom your brethren shall praise. The hand of the neck of the enemies is going to be the necks of the enemies going to be in your hand, and your father's children is going to bow down before you. Let's go to First Chronicles chapter 5 again. And start at verse 1.
The book of First Chronicles, chapter 5 and verse 1. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel. For he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright.
Go ahead.
For Judah prevailed above his brethren.
So it said Judah ended up prevailing above the rest of his brethren. Go ahead.
And of him came the chief ruler, but the birthright was Joseph's.
Now, who's the chief ruler of Judah? Who? Yahushua. Correct. Christ. He's the chiefest of rulers. But throughout history, one of the most renowned king. All right, then, sisters, y'all have a good one. Now, throughout history, one of the most renowned kings that you have is King David. There's probably no other man like that in the scriptures. Close with the Most High, beloved of the Most High, a great man. He was that man. So it says through Judah, he prevailed above his brethren, and through him came the chief ruler. So when it said in Genesis chapter 49, it said, Judah, thou art whom thy brethren shall praise. You see why. It says, thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Let's touch on that. Let's get 2 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 8.
The book of 2 Samuel, chapter 7 and verse 8.
Uh-huh.
And now, therefore, so shalt thou say unto my servant David, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be a ruler over my people, over Israel.
Dealing with that chief ruler. He said, hey, the Most High, he was the one to do that. Psalm chapter 18, verse 39.
The book of Psalms, chapter 18 and verse 39. For thou hast girded me with strength unto the battle.
So this is David speaking, because Genesis 49 said that the necks of the enemies was going to be in Judah's hand. Go ahead.
Thou hast subdued under me those that rose up against me.
Now, we don't even need to go into the history of David and how he was in war.
10,000.
His whole life was about war. He made sure that when his son Solomon came up, everything was going to be peaceful. He made sure of that. And David had so much love for the Most High, he wanted to be the one that was going to build the temple for him. But the Most High said, David, you can't do that, man. Your hands is defiled with blood. I appreciate the effort, though, but let's leave that to your son Solomon. All right, so we can see how what Jacob is telling Judah came to pass. Let's go to write down Leviticus chapter 26 and verses 7 through 8. Leviticus 26, verses 7 through 8. It talks about the ability that the children of Israel is going to have in war when we abided with the Most High and we kept his commandments, we kept his laws. But let's go back to Genesis 49. And you can pick up at verse 9.
You want me to finish 8?
Oh, yeah, finish 8. My bad.
Oh, wait, actually, I did finish. I can start at 9.
Yeah, go ahead.
The book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 9.
Uh-huh.
Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up.
Mm-hmm.
He stooped down. He crouched as a lion.
Uh-huh.
And as an old lion, who shall rouse him up?
So, Raya, you know what this is going into? It says Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. What's that dealing with? Not quite. I see where you can get that from because the lion, but when it says Judah is a lion's whelp, a whelp is like a kid. You dealing with a immature, not fully grown up. So when you're dealing with a lion's whelp, you're dealing like a baby lion. So you got to look at it when it's talking about its context. Because remember, Jacob was given the good things about some of the children and some of the bad things. So he said, look, Judah, you the man. You prevailed against your brethren. Everybody loves you. You got people bowing down to you. You was mighty in war, killing your enemies. But there's going to come a point in time where you're going to be like a lion's whelp. You're going to be like a kid, immature, unstable in a sense, right? It says, from the prey, my son, thou art gone up. So you have instances where we used to prey on the other nations, literally killing them like it was nothing when they came against our people. It says now we've gone up from that. We stopped doing that. We left off from that. We're being destroyed at this point. It says, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? Let's get some understanding on this. Go to Hosea chapter 5 and verse 14. Go ahead, read it when you got it.
The book of Hosea, chapter 5 and verse 14. For I will be unto Ephraim as a lion,
So listen what the Most High is saying to Israel. Go ahead. He said he's going to be to Ephraim as a lion. Go ahead.
and as a young lion to the house of
He
Judah.
said, but a young lion to the house of Judah. Go ahead.
I, even I, will tear and go away. I will take away, and none shall rescue him.
So again, going into the inability of a young lion to really be there as an adult lion to protect his nation, to kill the prey as an old lion would do. It says at this point we're being destroyed and there's nothing we can do about it. That's why I said he had stooped down as an old lion. Who's going to rouse him up? You didn't went from killing thousands in battle to living a life of just smoking weed now and being a bum. What happened, Israel? That's what's being said. Go to Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 8. Let me show you. Who's going to rise up? Judah, Israel in general. From what we came from to where we're at now, who's going to be that person that's going to rouse us up? I mean, we march, we ask for peace and for the violence to stop. That's what it's getting at. Why are you not fighting back? What happened to you? But the scripture is about to say it right now. Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 8.
The book of Isaiah, chapter 3 and verse 8. For Jerusalem is ruined.
Dealing with the northern, go ahead.
And Judah is fallen.
Dealing with the southern kingdom. It said they're ruined. They have fallen. Go ahead.
Because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord.
Everything we're doing is against the Most High God, and he's the one who took that power away from us. That's why he said in Hosea, even I am going to be the one to take away from you and destroy you. Who's going to help you out? There's no one there to save you. You see the admonishment that Jacob was trying to give his sons? Like I said, when you read precept upon precept, it makes perfect sense. Write down Nahum chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. And that talks about in general how the Most High was against Israel. Judah as well. Because you had, of course, the split within our nation to where we got both sides thinking that they solo now. You got a lot of 10 tribes saying, you know what, it's only us. To hell with the southern kingdom. Then you have the southern kingdom saying, you know what, to hell with the northern kingdom. But the Most High is here to say, nah, it's both of y'all that I'm against.
To hell with both of you.
That part. So let's go back to Genesis 49. We almost done. Nahum was chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. And you can pick up at verse 10 in Genesis 49.
You said Genesis 49, what? 10. The book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah.
So it says the scepter shall not depart from Judah, dealing with rulership, kingship. Why wouldn't that scepter depart from the tribe of Judah? Banaya. That's right, because Yahushua, Christ, he was that king that was prophesied about since this time of old. Like I said, our forefathers already knew the deal. People act like Christ just popped up on the scene. We've been knew about Christ. Moses knew about Christ. Go ahead.
Nor a lawgiver from between his feet.
It said, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. Go ahead.
until Shiloh come.
Because who was the lawgiver that we read about in the scriptures? The Levites, the tribe of Levi. But it said until Shiloh come, there's going to be a lawgiver given from Judah. Because didn't Christ take the high priest spot? So doesn't that make sense? And like I said, I didn't go into it, but when you compare this to what I'm going into, compared to saying how Negroes is the tribe of Judah, it makes no sense. It's dealing with the history of Israel and prophecy of Israel. So it said until Shiloh come. Let's go to Hosea real quick, chapter 3 and verse 5. Yeah.
The book of Hosea, chapter 3 and verse 5. Afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days.
Now here's the thing. How is David going to be around in the latter days? Him specifically, not. But through his loins, through his seed, Christ would come up. That's who the children of Israel would be hearkening to. Now, read the latter portion of Genesis 49 and verse 10.
Genesis chapter 49 and verse 10. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be.
See how that scripture falls right in line with that? Go to the book of Philippians, chapter 2 and verse 10. You said 2 and 10. Yeah, 2 and 10.
The book of Philippians, chapter 2, verse 10. That at the name of Yahushua, every knee shall bow.
So,
Excuse me,
hey.
every knee should bow.
Boom. The name of Yahushua, every single knee is going to bow. Why is that important? Go back to Genesis 49. And start at verse 8.
Genesis 49 and verse 8. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise.
Christ, go ahead.
Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies.
Christ.
Thy father's children shall bow down before thee.
Jesus Christ. So we can see, again, precept upon precept, the prophecies that was told and the warnings that was given to our people, how they correlate when it's read properly. Last little bit of this. Let's go to verse 11.
Verse 11. Genesis 49 and verse 11. Binding his foal unto the vine.
Yep.
His ass's coat unto the choice vine.
Yep.
He washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes.
Let's go to Matthew 21, because we're going to show you where Christ did exactly this. All those hundreds of years later, he did exactly as Jacob told Judah. So he said, binding his foal unto the vine, which is a young horse, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. Matthew 21, verse 1.
The book of Matthew, chapter 21 and verse 1. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem and were come to how you say that? Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Yahushua two disciples, saying unto them, go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them and bring them unto me. And if any man say aught unto you, ye shall say, the Lord hath need of them, and straightway he will send them.
There it is. The colt with the choice vine and the binding ass with the choice vine. All being fulfilled by Yahushua. Read verse 12 in Genesis 49.
Genesis chapter 49 and verse 12. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk.
Go to Matthew chapter 11 and verse 19.
The book of
11. Yeah. It's all good. All right. Matthew chapter 11.
19.
Yeah. So Genesis 49 said, his eyes shall be red with wine and his teeth white with milk. Go ahead.
The book of Genesis, chapter 11, verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, behold, a man gluttonous, and a wine bibber.
They call Christ a wine bibber. He stayed with some drink. He's probably drinking some Hennessy because y'all know that's wine, right? Cognac is wine, yeah. Go ahead.
A friend of publicans and sinners.
And this is going into the part where it said the white teeth is milk, because he was with the sinners teaching them pure things. When you read about the white things in the scriptures, it's always referencing the purity of things. So Christ is always speaking pure things, trying to get our people back into the light. Go ahead.
But wisdom is justified of her children.
Wisdom is justified in her children. So all praise be to the Most High. Hopefully y'all got some good understanding of the history of our forefathers. All praises, all praises. Before we end, was there any questions about anything?
I got a precept.
Oh, go ahead.
The precept.
Yeah, make sure you get these precepts, man, and put them in your Bible. I made the mistake when I first came in. I got a whole separate notebook precepts in. Not helpful. Oh yeah, you're gonna have to get a couple of them. Look at my first one. I put in the whole. I got pages upon pages.
You know how you read Genesis 49 where it talked about the wine. You could get Isaiah chapter 63 and verse 1, and then I'm gonna read where you read in Genesis 49 and verse 11. It said, binding his foal unto the vine and his ass's coat unto the choice vine, he washed his garments in wine and his clothes in the blood of grapes. I had a precept that I wanted to know if this would go with this scripture right here in
Definitely.
Isaiah 63. You can read that.
Definitely. Isaiah chapter 63 and verse 1. Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra?
So this is one of the prophets seeing a vision, asking the question, who is this? Obviously, this is talking about Christ, right? This is a prophecy that's going to come to pass in the end when Yahushua comes and destroys these nations, right? Specifically Edom, right? Go ahead.
This that is glorious in his apparel.
Right, glorious in his apparel. He has all this righteousness, right? Go ahead.
Traveling in the greatness of his strength.
Right, he's coming with his full fierce and anger.
I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel?
So wherefore art thou red? Why are you red? Why is your clothes red? You got all this righteous garment, and why is it red? Go ahead.
And thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat.
So it's also a future prophecy of what's to come. He's going to be in that wine press treading the fat. You read in Genesis, Revelation 19, where it talks about how he's going to come and kill all these nations. I believe in it said the sword shall bathe in heaven, right? I think it's in Genesis 19. Genesis 19, it says, Genesis 19 and verse 13, and he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. So it's the same prophecy, the same scripture, that precept for for Isaiah 63, and also goes back to his scripture in Genesis 49 and verse, what's that scripture? Genesis 49 verse 11, right? So that's also a prophecy where it said he treaded the wine fat. He was in the blood of grapes, right? Because wine is red. It's making comparison of his fierce, his anger treading these nations, under his feet. So
I'm gonna read verse 3 for you too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Verse 3. I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me.
Right. It was just him alone. Go ahead.
For I will tread them in mine anger and trample them in my fury,
Yep.
and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment.
Yep. So remember, you read in Revelation 1:14 where he said his garment was white, right? And then you read here, all that is gonna be dyed. It's gonna look like this.
It's gonna look like
You
the
know.
floor back there.
Exactly. that redness, which is the blood that it's gonna be spilled on him. You know, that's how he's gonna cleanse the land.
All praises.
Yeah.
I said, thank y'all for tuning in. Like I said, I went into the first 4 sons. Next week, other brothers will be continuing on with the next 4. So definitely be sure to tune in. Tomorrow is our Q&A. Starts at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you have questions about the Bible, questions you're too scared to ask your pastor, call in or tune in, ask your questions. We'll try our best to answer them. Shalom, Israel.
Shalom.